Hey everybody, welcome to Slash Bash, where today I am bringing you another Choosing Beggar Reddit video. If you are new to the channel, then subscribe, and click on notifications so you don't miss out on the fun. In our first story, a choosing beggar who has no prospects and is struggling to support himself, but who won't look for a job outside his field because it would be bad for his chi. Let's jump right in. Not long ago, I decided to restart my life and get a house to go with a promotion at my current job, which I still have, finally out of retail. I needed to get my life back on track, and this promotion was just the ticket, but I decided to rent a home rather than buy. Cost and effort-wise, this ended up being more involved than I initially thought, so I decided to seek roommates to help mitigate the costs. A friend of mine, who we shall call Gary, asked if he could be one of my roommates. Gary was a good friend who was very intelligent, studying in a very competitive field, but was convinced his skills and education would put him ahead of the pack. Gary had grants that could help pay for housing, and he convinced me he would get a highly paid job straight out of college in a few months. Silly me. I believed him, despite warnings from my family and friends. Gary brought on other roommates to help even the rent, and they are another story, but let's focus on Gary. Gary was the type who had been told how special he was his whole life, and how he would get a job out of college and be on top of the world. I don't blame Gary for this per se, so much as his parents, but it gave him an air of superiority that he would sometimes give off when talking about his field. Gary really was a highly intelligent and fun guy to be with, but his head often alternated being up in the clouds or far up his posterior. Gary was also not the smartest of spenders or most reliable when it came to help pay the rent. He once complained about having to ration his funds, but went out to buy a $300 smartwatch and a $2,000 gaming PC to help with his field, since using the college computers was a drain on his time and were not up to his standards. This led to him taking payday loans and later pawning the same watch. I tried explaining it would be better if he bought a cheaper computer or used a simple watch or could have my older Samsung smartwatch, but that wasn't good enough for Gary. Also, Gary would often borrow things or eat my food, then either put them back without cleaning or replace with a generic item. One big example were my Canada Dry Ginger Ale 2 liters. It's one of my favorite drinks, and I often stockpile them when they're on sale. I made it clear to my housemates not to drink them, but Gary thought it was okay to drink them and then replace them with generic brands. Seems like a petty issue, but these were my one thing I liked to enjoy. And Gary never bought groceries unless you include the occasional box of Kraft macaroni and cheese. He always relied on me to get groceries and complained if the quality wasn't good enough. Few months in, we had to move out of the house. It just wasn't working. Another story for another time. And I decided to move into an apartment. Gary thought he was coming with me, and I had to very politely tell him that was not going to happen. He was often late on payments, and I covered him and the other roommates on the utilities several times. I also covered the entire $2,400 deposit. The apartment I was moving into was a high-end that I still live in to this day, and the cost would have been too high for Gary, and I just didn't feel like spotting him the money anymore. I found a new roommate through work who was amazing, and we had a great stay until he moved out of state. Gary and his friends then spent the next several weeks harassing me, saying I left everyone out in the cold because I wouldn't allow him to stay for free in my new apartment. Oh, and those grants he was getting for living expenses? Those dried up after he graduated, and surprise! His education and portfolio didn't land him any jobs as the employers were not lining up as he thought they would. In short, Gary had no prospects and I couldn't financially support him anymore. Gary was a great guy, but was just a burden I could not financially sustain any longer, so I had to cut him loose. Gary began couch surfing 1 week at a time. I would have offered a week or two, but my new property management company has very strict rules and enforcement on guests. And Gary tends to broadcast a lot more than he thinks, so that would place my new situation at risk. I tried helping Gary find a job, including one at my company, which was very hard work and not at all in his field of study. When I offered him a reference to apply and get in with my company, his next words I will never forget. "Not working in my job field is not good for my chi, especially at your company. But I'm glad you're able to accept such mediocrity." I don't think he meant this as an insult, but it sure rang as one. It was here that my now partner and I decided to cut Gary completely loose. We didn't talk a lot after that, but he moved back to his mediocre parents' home out of state and then took me off his social media, where last I heard he's still trying to find a job in his field. I wish Gary the best of luck, I really do, but he really needs to get his head out of his butt. Story number 2 shows us a choosing beggar who expects her sister to watch her kids and pay for the privilege. My sister is a single mother. She was living on welfare in a crappy town with no jobs and plenty of drug users. I convinced her to move to my city and offered to watch her kid after school so she could find a good job. I offered to do it for free because I knew she couldn't afford to pay me. Her friend told her that welfare covers the cost of childcare and that she had a friend who watched her kid for free and let her keep all of the money welfare paid her. My sister thought this was a great idea. My sister told me about the childcare coverage and what her friend does. I told her I would gift her some of the money back, but not all of it. No, this would involve me signing a government form saying I got paid that money and I would need to claim that money on my annual taxes. Her keeping any of it would be tax fraud and I would be paying taxes on the money she was keeping. I don't get paid for the time it takes me to get to her kid's school or home or back to my sister's house to drop her off. I don't get paid for watching her kid if she goes out with her friends. If her kid needs to sleep over because there is no school the next day, I don't get paid until she starts work the next day. She still uses our laundry on weekends and my husband drives her to do errands when he has time for free. Every single month, she fights with me over the money welfare gives me. She says I don't deserve to be paid for this thing or that thing so she can keep more of the money for herself. I already give her over $100 every month. She got mad at me when my toilet broke and I had to go across town to get replacement parts, and told her to call the school and say she would be 20 minutes late picking up her kid, the time she told me she would be home that day. She got mad at me when my toddler got the flu and I wasn't willing to take them on the public bus for almost an hour to pick up her kid from school once. She got mad at me when I told her she would have to pick her kid up from my house because I had things to do at home and my husband had evening appointments and wouldn't be able to pick me and our toddler up from my sister's house until 9 p.m. if I didn't go home shortly after picking her kid up. No, we have one car, and my husband uses it, so I take the bus with my toddler every day, and my husband picks us all up and drops her kid back off when she is done work. I finally snapped and told her off. I told her she would have to find someone else to watch her kid because she obviously didn't care about my family's well-being. We are also moving in a few months anyway, which she has known about since before she moved here, but just assumed we would keep watching her kid until the day we left anyway. This has been John from Slash Bash. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video and want to see more of them, then please hit that subscribe button. We'd love for you to drop a like and share it with your friends, and we will see you in the next one.